Welcome to the Navigating Disruption podcast. I'm your host, Shaquille Barmel. I'm the CEO of Ocean Blue Strategic and partner with the Summit Group. I'm a coach, consultant, and speaker, and I help leaders, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals make an impact through improved performance. In this podcast, I share insights and interviews with interesting leaders to define practical lessons that you can use to make an impact in the face of uncertainty. We are proud to be brought to you by the Summit Group. We help companies increase revenue and deepen customer relationships by moving from sales excellence to authentic business relevance through engaging learning experiences. Jeff Knisley, how are you today?
I'm good, Shaquille. How are you? It's great
Good.
to be here with you, and it's been a while since we've actually chatted.
Yeah, and we're talking about how hard it has been for us to connect, and we've both been very busy over the last 18 months. So actually, this is no small miracle that we're actually here at the same time in the same place.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? It's funny because if you think about you and I and where we've been over the years, we seem to always go in the opposite direction as far as geography.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
But we always seem to find each other eventually, right?
Yeah, very true. Very true. I can't wait to get into this conversation. One of the things I've been finding from these conversations is that even though in many instances I'm talking to people that I've known for a long time, there's just something about this format that allows us to talk about things we never ever touched on. And so I've really been enjoying these conversations. We'll forget for a while that there's going to be anybody listening to this. It'll just be you and I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So cool.
Yeah. Well, let's just introduce our listeners a little bit to the relationship that we have. I'll start with a bit of recollection, and you can add to it if you will. Sure. The way I recall meeting you, knowing you, is that your partner, Julie, wonderful woman, was, I guess, a kind of a client of mine when I worked many years ago in management consulting.
Yes, that's right.
And a project that I was working on was encroaching on something that she was very passionate and serious about in her role. And our relationship started actually with tension because I was literally interfering with her project.
Yes, exactly.
I remember that. And we got through it. And in fact, we ended up forming a really close relationship. And one of the benefits of that is I ended up at your place and got to meet you at your place one, summer evening for drinks. And that's the first connection we ever had.
Yeah. And how interesting is that? It's funny because, not to talk too much about Julie and I, but that's how I first met Julie too, is I was disrupting something she was doing when we were together at Purolator. And, but eventually we got together. And Shaquille, Julie talks fondly of you and the relationship that you both had. I think that one of the things that really brought you and I together was the way that she actually talked about your relationship around selling, around development, and those different types of things, where I know you guys actually were even in a magazine together.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Yeah, that's true. Forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you forgot about that.
Cover story. It was the cover story. We
that's right.
The stuff we were doing was on the cover. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, and that you're right. We did meet. It was a summer night. She had her whole team over. Yeah. You were part of I think you were helping out at that point in time, but the relationship was very, very strong. And I think that one of the cool things is that at the time I wasn't working with both of you. I was actually at UPS. So I was like a competitor, right?
Yes, correct.
But from that, I really enjoyed meeting you and having that conversation. I think what that did is it sparked a little bit of a relationship where we were intrigued about each other. Mm-hmm. And there was different things. And so the eventuality is that those meetings, because they started to carry on and you started to be part of them, eventually led to you and I being able to kind of hook up and at one point in time doing business together. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll tell you, it's very interesting. You come to my house for dinner.
Yeah.
I went to your house for dinner. You remember that? I went to Vancouver.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And I got to meet your family. You invited me, and I think even your brother or someone else was there, and your kids. And at that time we were thinking of moving to Vancouver. But you just made me feel so comfortable. And I think that's one of the things that led to us actually doing business beyond that time.
Yeah, interesting.
Together.
Interesting.
Because we kind of bonded at different levels.
Yeah.
And there was a mutual respect for what we did. And
the feeling is definitely, it's the way I would say both Narissa and I feel about you and Julie. It's really hard to put into words.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be scrolling on Facebook and I'll read one of the comments Narissa posts on one of Julie's posts. I'm thinking, like, how did that happen? How did that kind of depth of relationship happen? I think a big part of it is the very nature of who you are as a team, and maybe we'll talk about that, but it
Sure.
does speak to kind of the connections. And I do believe nothing is random. Like, how did we go from that, me being Julie's consultant, to then being her coworker, colleague, peer, then we became confidants, then we became friends, and then you and I became friends, and then you and I we worked together on projects, which is
Yeah.
fascinating how life works. And I just reflected this moment as you were talking, how we've kind of ended up being a little bit kindred because we have a very similar philosophy to leadership and sales and customer relationships. But like, our backgrounds couldn't be more different, right?
Correct.
Like, you
Yeah.
came up through like school of hard knocks, getting things done across industries. And I was like keeping my hands very clean and going through the structure of school and studying and all of that and management consulting. But yet I consider you completely somebody I would call on for advice. And in fact, that's actually a very defining moment for me, Jeff. One time I called you for advice and I was
Yes.
making a decision. I was leaving Purolator and I was making a decision about joining the Summit Group.
I remember.
Yeah. And I called you. I remember I was in my basement. I was calling you saying, what should I do? Should I go for a job? I'm getting this offer. I said, Jeff, if I were to call you, and I think it was the economic meltdown was happening, the mortgage
Yeah.
crisis. And I called you and I said, look, if I came to you with this kind of pitch of this value proposition of this company, would you hire me? And yeah, and your reaction was, yeah. And that reaction was basically what tipped the scale for me to actually go after this entrepreneurial
How
opportunity
cool was
with the
that?
Summit Group. Yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually we did business together,
And
right?
then you called me one day and hired me.
Exactly. Come on in. I need your help, man.
Well, what was cool about that was, yeah, you hired me, but you actually didn't directly hire me. You connected me to people in your organization. And so while I didn't actually work with you directly, I worked with people on your team. It was great because we still had that relationship of trust, and it kind of spilled over into my work with your colleagues.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
I think what's really important about that too, and the connection, um, in business, it's very easy to say, "Hey, I know of Shaquille. He has this background. He can really help our organization." But that is a one-sided conversation of me trying to potentially be seen as bringing someone into the organization with not
Mm-hmm.
having a group buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time, my whole goal was I knew you could do what we wanted you to, what we
Mm-hmm.
needed as a sales organization, but I needed my team to buy in, and I
Mm-hmm.
needed not only my team, but remember Doug Clark,
Yeah.
our COO and senior vice president of sales.
Yeah.
I wanted him to buy in. So
Yeah.
basically, I kind of pushed you over to those people
Yeah.
to really help my case.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right, that was the strategy, and of course, you did exactly what I knew you were going to do, and you made believers just like I was a believer that you could help our organization.
Well, I have to say, so that organization was Trader in the automotive business. And I'll tell you that as much as I'm grateful for that opportunity to work with your team, it was actually very defining for me because your team was very creative and they pushed me in ways to do things that I wouldn't have done on my own. Because of their
Yeah.
requests, I got to develop a whole capacity for 360 assessments for salespeople. We built a whole methodology around that, and everything was very data driven and fact based. And we got to design some really cool case studies with your organization. So anyway, thank you. Thank you. It was
Yeah, no
a
problem.
great, remarkable moment, a remarkable conversation that turned into a whole series of events and activities. And I'm still doing it to this day. So pretty neat, pretty neat.
Awesome. Well, you're very good at it. So that's
Oh,
why you keep doing it, man.
thank you. Thank you. So Jeff, one of the things that we'll talk about is, the podcast is navigating disruption. That's the whole theme of it. You've basically had an entire career full of disruption. Some of it probably put on you, some of it you've actively sought. And so we'll talk about that. But before we do, let's set some context for the audience here and tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, the organization, the role, what industry, what are you doing now?
Yeah, and very interesting. I've spent my life in disruption, transforming, doing a lot of different things. And this role I'm in today was about me transforming or disrupting myself.
Mm,
So I've spent a lot of years in corporate business and grew up that way. I wanted to actually branch out and do something that was very, very different.
hmm.
And so I joined a startup called Autozen. So
Okay.
Autozen is within the automotive industry. We've been up and running now for approximately 8 months. We started with a $4.2 million investment that we were able to seek from the industry. And what we are is we're basically an auction where private sellers
Hmm.
come to have their cars sold and bid upon by dealers.
Hmm.
So we don't physically say that it's dealers. We actually talk about a buying network because
Hmm.
sometimes there can be a negative thought about, oh, I don't want to go trade my car in with a dealer or whatever. So we've created this environment. And
Ah,
really it's about you or I having a vehicle that we know we can go to Kijiji, Craigslist, or Facebook and promote our car, but it's not always safe. It doesn't feel safe. It's uncomfortable. It's a lot of work. It's so we just felt if we could make it fast, easy, right? Take away the pain and help you sell your car very quickly at the price you want, we have a potential game changer. So
huh.
so we launched this. We only run in BC today. We will be branching out across Canada and into the US. Everything we do is online. So we've created a marketplace that allows a user to come in and get an evaluation of their car.
Hmm.
And then part of the value we bring to it as well is we send an inspector out to take a look at your car,
Hmm.
right? To say, hey, we do a 140-point inspection right in your driveway.
Hmm.
But what it does is it creates an environment of trust and credibility for you as a
Hmm.
seller. It helps you to understand really what your car is worth,
Hmm.
right? And educate you. But then it helps on the buying side.
Hmm.
So dealers come in and they have it's more credible,
Hmm.
right? So that's the environment we have today. So I'm the vice president of business development. And really, this is just building this foundation. I only have one salesperson, but
Hmm.
myself and Joni, we hit the roads every day and meet up with dealers and bring them onto our platform.
Wow. I mean, I know that you've led really large teams across a number of industries. So this is kind of you
Yeah.
just starting something from scratch, which
Yes.
is kind of neat to be at that point in your career after having done all the things you're doing.
You know what? Very, very challenging too. So when I
Yeah.
talk about disrupting, this is disrupting and challenging me on my behaviors, my thoughts, how I would normally do things.
Hmm.
It's very uncomfortable and sometimes being with entrepreneurs who
Hmm.
are building out a business and you've always thought of it from a corporate or large
Yeah.
environment
Yeah.
and where those founders or entrepreneurs are very exact. They want to know the detail, they want all the specific answers and they want it now. And I had teams that did that for me. It wasn't
Hmm.
me, right?
Hmm.
That's not my
Yeah.
skill set.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the challenge is trying to meet that, right?
Yeah.
To actually push myself to it, and it's very uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, that is, and isn't that so describe the experience so many of us have had this last 18 months,
Yes.
it being forced upon us, but it looks like you've sought this out. So here's the big question. As you think about embracing new skills, things that make you uncomfortable, have you come up with your kind of way of learning something new that works, that fits? How would you describe the way you're learning right now?
Yeah, my traditional way of learning has been very just to be pragmatic, right? To
Yeah.
be part of an environment, to fully understand it, to be at the ground level, embrace it, and understand, what's going on from all different angles.
Hmm.
So if I was running a sales organization, I'd want to be on sales calls.
Right.
I'd want to be utilizing all the tools. I'd want to
Right.
understand how I'd place orders. I'd want to understand how our customer success works and how we had talked to customers. That's how I would adapt in a normal corporate environment
Hmm.
so that when I came back to my working with my teams, they really saw me as a teammate and not a team leader.
I see.
But also because I truly need to understand what their pain points are. And I'm the only voice that they have back to the organization
Yeah.
about what truly is happening in the field. Now,
Yeah.
here in today's environment, I'm having to do the same thing, but it's uncomfortable because a lot of the people around me, like, I have an ego. I think I'm a smart guy. I think I
Yeah.
know these stuff, but no, man, I'm getting put into a corner right
Yeah.
now because they're teaching me every day about, okay, Jeff, we get that you get it at this high level. We need
Yeah.
you to come down 3 levels,
Yeah.
go deeper and give us this, right?
Yeah.
Gather this information or gather these tools. And so for me, The pragmatic approach really helps.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable because I'm off kilter. I don't feel that I'm always in control. And for once in my career, I'm having to potentially impress someone else as opposed to them trying to impress me.
Interesting. Well,
Right?
that is interesting because I mean, that is one of the things that I haven't really thought about this, but if I was to ask myself, what is the image or what are the words that I have in my mind when I think about you and the way you conduct yourself, is always confident, always seem to know what needs to happen next. And if I can say this a little bit without, this is that the Jeff's not the guy you want to meet in a dark alley and be up against, right?
Yeah.
Like you're the guy that kind of, you have the confidence to get through tough situations and people know to stay out of your way. But at the same time, you've got this really soft edge, real leader, this kind of person that invites people over to their house to get to know them, your team, your employee. So now you're saying that would you acknowledge that you've always been pretty confident and know what needs to happen, right?
I have always been that way.
Yeah.
And I've been self-aware, Shaquille, of my tougher side. It's almost one of those survival instincts, I think, that I had to use to grow up. And when I got into corporate life, it was very difficult to kind of put that away and just be corporate Jeff.
Yeah.
And so, but people allowed me in my career, they allowed me to bring out a little bit of that, I'll go less elegant side of me.
Yeah.
But the point is that when leading people and teams and having teammates, they don't care about the corporate side. They care about, do you know me? Can we transact together? Like, can we just be normal?
Yeah.
And I know it sounds kind of Pollyanna, but it's what has helped me.
Yeah.
But I am aware of both sides. And I think that the one thing that is a gift that not only came from, from growing up in different times, but also came from my wife, Julie, was finding that softer spot and finding the ability to really recognize where people are struggling and where they need help. And it's not that they can't do a job. It's not that they're not skilled. They either lack the confidence, the training, or they lack someone to be there to make them feel confident. Not that they're not, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So for me, I don't even know if I'm answering the question specifically of what you said, Shaquille, but it's difficult because now today in my current role, I'm in that environment where I'm like, I don't have a tough shell around me right now.
Interesting. Yeah. Fascinating.
Right? There's no armor. I am completely open.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people get to look at me and see me in different ways. And sometimes I feel like I want to defend myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is not about an industry or a business being disrupted. It's about me personally.
Fascinating. So like, if I reflect back on what I've just heard from you, is that, and I'm making it really simple, is that you have kind of come into business learning as you go, a little bit of a street fighter mentality in you from early in life, but you kind of learn the corporate lingo, but maintained your authenticity because people rewarded you for being authentic.
Yes.
But you've taken that confidence that you've had and actually used it to the service of others, because you come across and work with people that aren't as confident. So you've kind of transmitted some of your confidence to them, to hold them capable, to boost them up. And that's allowed you to work in these disruptive industries. We talk about the days of advertising automobiles in like a print newspaper, or the yellow pages where you work, where you kind of open up a book to look up a number, to very disrupted industries that you actually led through disruption. But now you're in a place where you yourself are being disrupted and you're being kind of told things you need to do by people much younger than you that have experiences that you don't have, and you're uncomfortable. And so tell me how that feels physically. How does that feel phingly?
Well, the street fighter in me is just burning in my belly each day, right? It's difficult for me to be in conversations or meetings and not want to engage or be part of the conversation, because I've always had the knowledge to do that.
Yeah.
Now I don't always have the knowledge, and I can't speak at the same level because I'm learning. So I can speak, but I can speak at generalities, not 2 levels or 3 levels below. So that's tough. That's really tough, actually. It's a shot to the ego. I can honestly say that.
For sure.
But the one thing, and by the way, Shaquille, I don't even know if I could, if I can master this or not. It may not be my gig in, long term, but man, I am learning a lot. And what it's really helped me is that I think I've really grown to understand through COVID the difference between corporate sales leadership and whether it's SaaS or startup leadership. I'm beginning to really understand how the two can come together and how there is value on each side of it. And here's an interesting thing I'll tell you is that working with SaaS companies or in a startup organization, they always have a negative thought about corporate life.
Yeah, SaaS, let's define it for people. SaaS, software as a service, right?
That's correct. Yes. And so it's kind of like, yeah, corporate life, they really don't know how to do what they're doing. We're the young, we're the energetic, we're all these different types of things, and we can crush it type of thing is the attitude.
Yeah.
And so, and then the same source from a corporate perspective, they would look at these startup organizations and go, why would you ever want to be there? Like, are they going to survive? Are they not going to survive? But the real point of inflection here for me was when I started to look at both of them, if they actually started to talk with each other and listen to what's going on, there are so many areas that they can cross over, but it's very challenging. Looking at a sales process through COVID where I can no longer be in the field. I have to now be on a Zoom call and I have to have conversations with people and it's uncomfortable to present that way. A SaaS organization would say, I got this covered, no problem. I am built for this. Well, yes and no, right? A corporate organization who is now being disrupted because their field salespeople have to come in and sit behind a computer and maybe they don't have the skill to talk, the value to express. Maybe relationships one-to-one, like you and I having a conversation and sitting in front of each other are easier for me because I can be freewheeling. And now that you and I are having a conversation, it's via Zoom. It's a different environment, but it's really not.
Yeah, you're right. Because like, I mean, we're having a conversation now, like we would have had having a beer or having a drink in the same way but it's on a screen. Whereas if you're beginning a relationship and you don't have that established relationship, it can feel a little bit awkward, difficult, contrived.
Well, let me put it in a different way. Have you ever met someone over Zoom during COVID and then eventually had the opportunity to meet them in person, but you've never met them in person before?
Yeah. You know what? Not yet. Okay. Yeah.
So my current team, so my current team last week was the first time I got to meet them all in person. And oh my God, it was like this beautiful type of environment because some were short, some were tall, some were like they were just so different. It was like, oh my God, I just want to hug you. Like, so there's two dynamics here that I think if they came together, the power of these dynamics could work so much better in organizations selling and engaging with customers and things like that. And it has to do with not only the human element, but this other element of being able to drive value and have discussions and do it over technology as opposed to doing it in person.
Well, you know what you're speaking to, both the whole corporate SaaS, the whole virtual live thing you're talking about right now is the latest thing I'm so interested in as I'm developing my coaching practice is how much power there is when you realize what's available to you when you can hold opposites.
Yes.
It's kind of like holding the opposing forces. If you can find a way to harness opposing forces that most of the world think are completely opposite, but you can find a way to hold them both together, like there's tremendous potential and power. So you describe what is the best of kind of the corporate capabilities and practices and behaviors, but what is the best of the startup, scrappy, SaaS, technology oriented? What is the best of live engagement and what is the best of virtual? And if you can hold the two together, I almost imagine it like there's a superhero kind of element to this, that's kind of holding these really strong forces, but bringing them together. And that's what I feel like you're describing a little bit here.
That is what I'm describing. And I think that what'll be interesting to see within the market as we move forward out of COVID, how many organizations will embrace what they've learned and combine the two, and how many will kind of go back to the way that they've always done it. Right. And it's almost like we talk about training, and you and I have talked about this many times. Training and leading sales organizations where the fundamentals of those trainings are not part of the leadership. They're not part of what you do every day. They're not ingrained and become part of the fabric of your organization. Basically get trained and put on a shelf. everyone goes back to what they normally have done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that today's environment, a lot of companies need to look at what has happened during COVID and figure out how they maintain those learnings and just don't put them on a shelf because life is going to go back to normal.
Absolutely.
Right.
Actually, one of the things I've experienced as I've been in this business again, in this COVID environment, it's something I always believed to be true. And I think you did as well, is that training is not about telling people how to do things and saying, do this and you will get the result. This is the way to do this. This is the result you'll get. Some people, some organizations, many organizations train that way, right? Yeah. Step by step, here's what you do, here's the outcome. I've always believed that training is about setting up an environment, a context where the people that are in the room actually already know what needs to be done. And your job is to create a conversation, provide some structure so they can take what they know in the back of their brain, put it out front, practice it, and be more fully aware of the results and the impact when they do or don't do what they already know is within them. That's kind of my philosophy.
I completely agree with you. And it's why, it's one of the reasons why you and I have been engaged in different environments and done different things together, is simply because of that. Personally, when I talk about myself as being a pragmatic individual, I've been on many of these training sessions, whether it's spin selling, whether it's the Xerox approach, whether it's value-based selling or solution selling, whatever you want to talk about. I've been part of them and basically slept through a week of training.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then come out the next week and go back to doing what I normally have done. And I don't know how much that company had invested in me, but I know it was a lot.
Yeah.
And so today, in any sales organization that I'm a part of or I'm associated to, I really focus on embracing whatever the training program is that we feel is right for that organization at that point in time as part of our DNA.
Yeah.
And if I can't embrace it as a DNA, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah. And to embrace it as DNA means it's got to represent something you already believe. So It's not about installing something new. It's about taking something you already believe as being true and actually making it real, making it happen and reinforcing it. And so that's one of the things that I've always experienced. And what I'm finding right now in this kind of post-COVID environment is that you can't believe anybody that says this is the way to do it. Because the truth is, nobody actually knows what is going to be the outcome of doing any one thing. I mean, that's the nature of the times we live in. That's the nature of disruption. You actually don't know what will happen when you do this, because somebody else might do that, and then somebody else might do that, and you create a whole different outcome. So I'm finding that in these kinds of conversations, and you're surely finding it in what you're doing in leadership, is that if you can create a context where people are comfortable with the idea of not knowing the outcome, but trusting themselves to get the right signals and information and ask the right questions to get at least some clarity about what's in front of them right now, and 3 or 4 possible outcomes based on whatever they do, that's, I think, the greatest gift you can give people, I think, when you're leading them and coaching them and training them.
You know what, Shaquille, I agree. And I think that one of the things that I have learned specifically is that iterating, pivoting, whatever people want to use as the terminology today, is critical and needs to become a standard in organizations around their sales teams. I grew up in an environment which was very different back in the, the 80s and 90s, where here's the philosophy of selling. Here's how you will do it. You're going to use this document to present, and you know what I mean? And but the best salespeople always deviated. Right. And I think today
the best salespeople always deviated, and the best salespeople frustrated marketing because they just wanted them to follow this template, use this copy, use this collateral, right?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And so, when I speak to any teammates today, I talk about the fact that we're going to live in a world of ambiguity. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's okay, because I'm not going to hold you accountable to things that are not comfortable to you. Nor am I going to hold myself. We'll have our KPIs that'll say, here's what we need to do. But that ambiguity is there because it allows us to iterate or change as the world around us changes. And I think the other part of it is that it allows me as a leader to also learn from the people that are around me. Oh my God, if I didn't spend the time that I did just learning from my teammates and salespeople and behaviors and stuff like that, I'm not sure I would have had the career I've had.
Yeah.
So I think that's a gift too, that organizations today need to allow their sales organizations, because we can be structured. Marketing can structure it, leadership can structure it, but allowing them to be a little bit more free flowing.
Yeah.
And that's tough for organizations, but
Yeah.
if you can do it in a way that's controlled,
Yeah.
sounds weird, free flowing, controlled.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is, you're just expanding the sandbox.
I agree. I agree.
Right?
I just, something just connected for me when I just thought about you and the way what you're experiencing now in your self-disruption is that back in the day, your greatest strength, your greatest success in your career, your fast rise up the corporate hierarchy was because you had a confidence and a belief in what was right, what was pragmatic, and you knew what needed to get done and you knew what was right.
Yes.
It's almost like now, and you're in the midst of this journey, that you're at least recognizing that success in the future comes from your ability to actually not know what the right answer is.
That's right.
So you got to where you are because you knew the right answer. You're going to get the rest of the way because you're going to be open and recognize the value of being able to honestly say, I actually don't know the right answer.
And that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
So for a sales leader and any sales individual, we have big egos, right? We believe in ourselves. We're confident. And for me, I find that very challenging because I want to have the answer.
Yeah.
I believe that people look at me and say, Jeff's got the answer.
Yeah.
And to not have it is that it's a constant fight where sometimes you can get in your head and it's almost like, man, can I do this? Like, am I skilled at this?
Yeah.
And you're creating situations or negative thoughts that I'm always working to try and get out of my mind too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because as I said earlier, my armor is off and I'm open to environments and people that I never was before.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, and you may have not have thought about it, so I might be putting you on the spot, is what is the good that comes out of not knowing the answer?
For me, it's a personal learning that I'm getting from this. It's like my own little personal MBA. But I think the other part is it helps me to do a couple different things. It helps me to listen. I'm not always a good listener, Shaquille, right? When you know the answer, people are talking to you, but you're just like, yeah, whatever, I'll get you the answer.
Yeah.
Right. So you're missing that. That's number one. Number two is I think I'm becoming a better leader because I'm involving other people in my journey.
Yeah.
It's not just me involved in their journey.
Yeah.
So you just take it's just a whole different perspective. It's like people are more of your friends than a coworker.
Yeah.
Because you're relying on them to help you learn and be successful. Yeah. Right. And at this stage of my career, I'm not looking to climb a corporate ladder.
Yeah.
What I'm looking to do is personally grow, be happy with what I do, influence people that I can, and give back to those people that have done so much for me that I might have ignored over a period of time, like you. No, kidding. But you know what I mean? Like it is that. I think that's what's helped me today in my environment. And as I said earlier, I'm always aware that this might not be the perfect fit for me.
Yeah.
And that's okay from my perspective. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. It's part of your journey. It's part of your learning journey. You're going to come out of this.
And it's not about what's on my LinkedIn. It's not about how people see me or why did Knisley go here, here, and here. It's not about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I love it. I don't know if you realize the goal that is in what you just said in the answer to that question. Not knowing the answer makes you a better listener, makes you able to seek other people's perspectives, therefore making you a better leader, and opens up for new learnings, for new growth, for new learnings that you wouldn't experience if you actually knew the answer. So does processing any of that help you deal with that, what you said was the ego of not knowing the answer?
Here's the funny thing, and just if I can be a little bit human here, there are times where I can get off a call, I'm with my teammates, and maybe my boss has kind of, said, hey, Jeff, completely off base. You should be here, here, and here. And I leave the call and it's almost emotional for me. It's almost like I want to cry, right? It's like, oh my God, for the first time in my career, I'm not in control. I am not the voice that can say yes or no. And I'm now being pushed in this environment that is, yeah, it's emotional,
Yeah.
right? Because and I keep pushing through that. And it's a good thing that I have my beautiful wife, Julie, that is also there to support me, because what I talked about earlier, Shaquille, in my career, I've gone through bouts of depression. I've gone through different aspects of my life that have helped change me. And I think part of the challenge that people, especially in leadership, deal with today is that you're alone, right? You are seen as the individual with the answers potentially.
Yeah.
And because of that, you stop doing those things that make you human, which is reaching back out to everyone around you, because you got this layer or hierarchy there.
Yeah.
And this is what this has taught me. So where earlier in my career, I might not have thanked people for their feedback or criticism, or Jeff, you should have done this or done that. Today, I'm so thankful.
Yeah.
It's kind of corny or to a fault, but I get on the phone with some of the people I work with and I say, hey, listen, first of all, I'm going to ask you for your feedback, because I think I was offside in a conversation. So can you give me your feedback? Number one. Number two is thanks for being honest with me.
Yeah.
Okay. Because this is going to help me. Yeah. Right. So I may make this mistake again, but probably not, because at least, you cut through all of that stuff that people put up, all those boundaries, right? You just cut through it. And so you help me. And so like you do today, which is, one of the things I love, Shaquille, about what you do today is you are giving back to all the people around you. So whether it's consulting, training, development, coaching, you're at a level of your career where you're able to help people become better. And it's a gift, right?
Thank you.
Yes, you have to survive. And yes, it's a business and all those other things.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the other reason, when I look at you, it spurred me to be more active with my network, to call people, to reach out, just to talk to them.
Yeah.
Right. And to give back. When people actually send me notes now and say, hey, Jeff, can you do this, that, or the other thing? I send them a note back as opposed to ignoring them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I mean?
funny, eh? Yeah. Basic human connection. That's one of the gifts. That's honestly one of the gifts of this pandemic, right? Is it created this space where you had nothing to gain from people, right? And so it was just really about the connection. Like nobody could buy from you, or they were not going to buy from you because there was just too much uncertainty. So you got rid of this guise that people would think you're only calling them because you wanted something from them, because there's nothing they had to give you. So it really was truly just about the human connection. And that's what I gained from this last year and a half.
Yeah, I think even beyond that, I think that when one of the things I've really become self-aware of is my true skills and the areas that I'm lacking in. And, when I talk to different organizations, whether it's, I'm consulting with them, it's a business I'm working in today, a friend calls me for something, maybe in my earlier career, I might've said, yeah, I can help you with this, that, or the other thing, but really, could I? Did I really have that experience? Right.
Right.
And I think that as a leader, it's the one thing that I've really tried to step back from over the past couple of years, and that is being the person that knew everything. And so when I've talked before I joined here at Autozen, and I was looking at different opportunities, and people would say, they'd send me the LinkedIn post of a job, and it would have all these aspects of the job. If you're really truthful, you probably have like 5 out of 10. But the other 5, you're not that skilled at.
Yeah.
In this world of disruption, especially in transforming businesses and all those types of things, transparency, honesty are critical to you building the right team and that organization facilitating you with the right people to actually make it work. The problem I have today is so many organizations, when they're looking for leaders, are looking for leaders to fit into this, almost this structure of you need to have all of these different things. And part of the challenge is many sales leaders, or many leaders, not just sales, struggle or fail because they haven't been, I'll call it, insulated. Either personally they've insulated themselves, or the organization has insulated them.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like, here's all the attributes you need to have, Shaquille. And so I'm going to hire you because you have them. But really, at the end of the day, you don't have them all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so So, and you struggle. So every time you come up against one of those attributes, it's not one of your skills. So me, it's analytics.
Yeah.
I've got to have someone there to support me on the analytics side, because I don't want to look at spreadsheets all day. I want to be with people.
Yeah.
Right. I want to coach and mentor. I want to be in front of customers. Right.
Yeah.
So when I talk to organizations today, I say, hey, listen, if your structure doesn't support or give me the support from a financial and analytics standpoint, I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
And some of them look at me and go, what? You
Yeah.
manage all these organizations, but that's not my skill set.
Yeah.
To get the most out of me, right? This is what we have to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's, what you're describing there is this idea of, there's been a lot of discussion around in the past, you do performance reviews. It's all about trying to find out what are your weaknesses, what are your gaps, how do you get better at getting over your weaknesses, how do you close those gaps? When in reality, the research now shows that, okay, forget about your weaknesses and gaps. What can you do to elevate the strengths? What can you do to actually amp up those things that you're already good at, create circumstances where you can do more of that, and find other people to do the things you're weak at? Now, getting, you also have to balance on the other side that you can't say that, oh, I don't know how to do that, therefore I'm not going to try. But the true growth comes from recognizing that here's what I'm really good at. I'm going to go 120% on that. And I'm going to figure out how to close the gap on this other stuff.
Yes.
But that's not where my attention is going to go.
Yes.
And that's what you've, I think, described there. And I think people that realize that earlier in their career do a lot better over time.
Yeah. And I think that organizations that are looking at leadership and looking at how to either improve the leadership they have and their skill sets, or to help them become more successful, need to look beyond just the individual and what are the areas that we need to support them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Really great.
Yeah.
Really great.
And it can come from training, but it can come from other people being part of your team.
Well, what happened here is exactly what I expected to happen. Is I had a few questions lined up. We covered maybe one of them, and then the rest of it we just invented, which I thought would happen. And I'm really grateful that it happened. You were very human, very honest. And I think that itself is a tremendous service to others. So thank you for doing that. In our last couple of minutes here, you've shared a lot. I'm just wondering, is there a piece of advice you'd leave with leaders that are listening to this podcast? I have a range of people that are seasoned leaders, but I also have a number of up and coming leaders that listen to this podcast. Any advice for those up and coming leaders?
Yeah, I think, some of the simplest things that we always hear, but we never really listen to, and that is listen.
Mm-hmm.
One. Number two is you're never the smartest person in the room.
Mm.
And especially if your ego gets away from you, that can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
It's okay to be just human. For me, in my environment, when I grew up, I think I had that real tough edge because I didn't want people to see what was behind the door. Right. Huh. Even today where people will say to me, so what's your education? Yeah. In my past, I'd say, well, I kind of like today I don't have an education. I didn't go to university. There's not a degree on my wall. I did facilitate myself with different education as I went through it. But like you said earlier, I learned what I learned growing up in organizations and people giving me the opportunity. And I think that's the other part of it. I would say that there were people in my career, and some of them you do know. Mark O'Brien, who's at Autotrader. He's the vice president of sales over there. Doug Clark, who was the COO and senior vice president and president at Autotrader. What these individuals did is Mark was my support. He was my teammate. He knew how I operated, and he helped me in so many ways because he was just genuine with me. Yeah. And I know that that's his makeup. Totally. Right. But Doug Clark, I think, gave me the greatest opportunity in my career was when he brought me to Autotrader as a sales leader when I really wasn't a proven sales leader yet, put me in a whole different industry. Yeah. And all he said to me, I remember the conversation we had. He said, listen, Jeff, I'm not bringing you here to change everything we do. I want you to be charismatic, help your sales team lead. Yeah. And when you feel that you need to make changes or do things differently, don't ask for permission, right? If there's money involved, yes, but do what you feel is right. Yeah. And every time I got off track, Shaquille, he'd come back to me and say, Jeff, stop trying to impress people. Okay.
Yeah.
Do what you know is right.
Yeah.
It might not look pretty on the outside,
Yeah.
but it works. And so from my perspective, when talking to anybody else about leadership and things like that, there are two different types of leaders. There's the school trained leader, I'll call it that. Very well educated, exceptional people are in those environments. If you can take that, if that is you, and you can take that and bring some human aspects to it and learn from those around you, you become a much better leader. And then for those that aren't, right, they don't have that educational background but want to be leaders, it's really about learning from the influential leaders that you're with, right?
Yeah,
Coveting all the information.
Yeah, so good. So good. That last articulation of the value of what Doug gave you is that reminding you to be authentic, reminding not to try to be somebody you're not. Really, really valuable advice. And I'm really glad you brought up Mark O'Brien, because another exceptional person that I've also had a chance to work with in my career as well. And I'm going to specifically talk to him now because I want to be able to send in this episode and know that we're talking about him, because I actually would like to invite him as a guest. So Mark, you're listening to this now. I'm coming for you next, my friend. I look forward to having a conversation with you. Jeff, thank you so much for everything you've offered this conversation. You over-delivered. I knew it would be a great conversation, but it's even better than I would have hoped. Grateful for that. Please give my love to your entire family. Your family is beautiful, so value-centered. They're doing great things in the world. It's always a joy to kind of watch and see what you guys are up to together. So thank you for sharing that so much.
Same to you, and appreciate being here, and anytime. You know what, they're 6 months, a year from now, the way that I'm kind of, dynamically changing who I am, there might be other things that I might be able to bring value on, because I'm learning so quickly.
I'm confident. Well, let's put that in the books, and that we'll come back, talk 6-8 months from now, see what's going on for you. And I look forward to that conversation. That'll be part 2.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Shaquille.
I have known Jeff for 17 years, but have never had a conversation with him like this one. Here's what I took away. In customer relationships, willingness to do business are directly connected to personal trust. Now, this sounds so obvious, but just think about how many people you know that still try to win business primarily on the features and benefits of the products or services they sell. Everyone knows that trust matters, but not everyone takes the time to build trust in that relationship. Jeff talked about his journey of leadership, from taking a position of strength and experience to giving confidence to others, to now drawing from a position of vulnerability and courage to draw knowledge and experience from others to build his own confidence. This new approach is making him a better and stronger leader and a better listener. We talked about one of my favorite new ideas, the power that comes from holding and embracing opposites. He specifically referred to the opportunity available when large companies with established processes and resources learn from the agility and innovativeness of startups and vice versa. He says this kind of exchanging of ideas and embracing of practices doesn't really happen, but when it does, there is powerful transformation. Finally, he shared how in his experience of seeking self-disruption, he has learned to be open to the growth available to him when he fully experiences the emotions that come from having his ego challenged. I hope you can draw something from Jeff's willingness to share so openly. Thank you, Jeff, and have a great day. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, or share it. I want to say thank you to one of my favorite bands, Late Night Conversations, for sharing their song Chaos with me and letting me use it in this episode. You can learn more about them on Instagram at LNCConnected. And here's more of their song Chaos to take you out.
Far behind my eyes, mediation, suffocation, it'll break me. Information in disguise. But when your eyes finally found mine, you were there, but I'm defined by the chaos in my mind. my soul and leaving me to die. And I feel the lace and LNC like racing on stationary animation, taking me from the purpose of my life.